During a live French television broadcast, a well-known host made a bold and disrespectful comment about President Ibrahim Traoré's military attire, thinking it would just be a passing joke. But what followed stunned the audience and shook the studio. Ibrahim's calm but powerful comebacks, and a message the entire world heard loud and clear. This moment became an instant headline, and for good reason. The French TV studio was bright, flashy, and loud. It was a live broadcast of one of France's biggest political shows. Millions were watching across Europe and Africa. Tonight's guest, Ibrahim Traoré, the president of the transition of Burkina Faso. He wore his usual military uniform. Calm, focused, proud. But then, the host laughed, a laugh too sharp. He leaned into the camera and said with a grin, "Tell me, Mr. President, is it wartime in your studio too?" The audience laughed nervously. It wasn't just a joke. It was disrespect. The room went quiet. Cameras kept rolling. The host smiled like he'd scored a point. But Ibrahim did not smile back. He gently adjusted his collar, looked at the host, and then directly into the camera. Like he was speaking to every child in Burkina Faso, watching from dusty living rooms. His lips moved slowly. This uniform is not decoration. It's pain, sacrifice, and blood of those who can't speak here today. I wear it so the voiceless are seen. The studio fell completely silent. And that's when Theral Storm began. For several seconds, the studio froze. The host blinked, unsure what to say. Ibrahim Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. But in that silence, everyone felt something strange in their chest, like guilt or shame. He continued quietly. This uniform is for the mother who lost her son protecting a school, for the child who sleeps with the sound of gunfire, for a country that bleeds but never bows. There were no more jokes. Suddenly the comment didn't feel funny. The laughter that had echoed just minutes ago felt like a wound. A woman working behind the camera wiped her eyes. The host's smile slowly faded. People watching across Africa began recording their screens, tweeting clips with the words, "Respect, honor, Traoré." In Ouagadougou, people gathered around TVs in silence. One woman whispered to her neighbor, "That's our leader." He spoke for all office. The show cut to a commercial break, but it was too late. The moment had already gone viral, and by the time the cameras came back on, the president wasn't finished yet. When the show returned, Ibrahim Traoré turned his chair slightly, not toward the host, but toward the audience watching at home. "You see a uniform," he said gently. "Let me tell you what I see." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded, faded photo. It was small, old, torn at the edges. He held it up to the camera. "This is my best friend, Musa. We trained together. We dreamed of building schools, not bunkers. We fought side by side, and never came home." The camera zoomed in. Musa looked young, kind, proud, full of life. His mother still cooks his favorite rice every Sunday, hoping it smells strong enough to bring him back. I visit her when I can. I don't wear this uniform for me. I wear it for him. The host looked down. Words had become heavy. People across the world, from Paris to Abidjan to rural Burkina Faso, felt their eyes burn. The photo, the pain, the honesty. It was no longer about clothing. It was about memory. And the uniform had just become a symbol of something too deep to ignore. The studio lights felt hotter now. The cameras captured every breath. Ibrahim Traoré placed the photo of Musa gently on the table. He wasn't performing. He was remembering. "When Musa died," he continued, his voice steady, but heavy. "I couldn't cry. I was holding a rifle, not a handkerchief. I was holding a country." The host looked up, ashamed, as if realizing his joke had walked into something sacred. Ibrahim glanced at him, not with anger, but something deeper understanding. "You see, comedy, we live conflict. You wear suits in warm studios. We wear uniforms under bullets." In the back row of the audience, a young intern, barely older than 20, quietly wiped her cheeks. She had never seen a president speak like this. Not on TV, not with this kind of rawness. Outside the studio, Clips of the broadcast were now spreading like wildfire on social media. People started adding "Chin is stand with Tro" to their posts. In Burkina Faso, cafes erupted in applause. Mothers cried. Young soldiers stood straighter. And for the first time in a long time, people didn't just see a president, they saw a brother. Backstage during the commercial break, Trey's phone vibrated. It was a voice message from a number he hadn't saved, but he recognized the voice instantly. Monfils, it's me. Moose's mother. He closed his eyes as her soft, trembling words filled the silence. I saw you on the TV. You still carry him. Thank you for not letting the world forget. He didn't reply. He couldn't. His throat tightened, and for a moment even the strongest man in the room felt like a son again. When he returned to the stage, the energy had shifted. The audience, once just curious, now sat on the edge of their seats. The host tried to change the topic. Let's talk politics, he said. But Ibrahim held up a hand gently. No, tonight I'm not here for politics. I'm here for truth. He looked directly into the camera once again. Africa doesn't need pity. We need respect, not applause, but understanding. The silence was louder than applause. Back in Burkina Faso, children gathered around radios, grandfathers leaned closer to TVs, and in that moment, the whole continent leaned in too. By midnight, the clip had reached over 10 million views, not just in Burkina Faso, but in Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, and even France. Young people shared it with captions like, "This is how a leader speaks." He didn't raise his voice, but he raised all of ours. Even major news outlets that usually ignored African voices had picked it up. The African president, who silenced the studio with dignity. One headline read, "In the studio, the host, once smug, now looked human, humbled." He leaned forward and asked quietly, "What drives you, Mr. President?" Traoré smiled softly, acidness in his eyes. "Every morning I wake up, I ask one question: how do I honor the dead without failing the living?" The audience held their breath. Leadership is not pride. It's not a title. It's a promise, and sometimes a heavy one. The studio was no longer just a stage. It had become a memorial, a school, a mirror. And across the globe, people didn't just watch. They felt, they wept. And the world was finally listening. When the show ended, Ibrahim Traoré stood slowly, adjusted his uniform, and gave a small nod to the audience. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just walked. The host called after him awkwardly, "Merchipot." But Ibrahim didn't answer. His silence said everything. As he exited the studio, a young technician approached him, tears in his eyes. "Mon Rayon, my father served in Mali. He never came back. Thank you for making him visible tonight." Ibrahim placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. He seen and never forgotten. That quiet exchange, captured by a behind-the-scenes camera, was posted online. Within hours, it had 12 million views. People weren't just watching, they were sobbing. In Burkina Faso, a teacher paused her lesson to play the clip for her class. "This," she whispered, "is how history is written." And in villages without internet, elders retold the story word by word, like poetry passed through generations. Ibrahim didn't scream. He didn't threaten. But his silence thundered louder than gunfire. That night, the world didn't just hear a leader. They felt one. 2 days after the broadcast, Ibrahim sat alone in his guest room in Paris. No security, no noise. Just him, his boots, and a letter that had been slid under his door. It was handwritten, fragile, ink smudged in places. It read, "Miss le President, I am a former soldier. I served during colonial operations in Africa many years ago. I was told we were helping, but now I know we weren't. Watching you on that stage, it broke something in me, and it healed something too. I'm sorry for the things we did, for the things we ignored. You spoke for more than your people. You spoke for all of us who wish we could turn back time. Please accept this medal. I no longer deserve it. Jean-Pierre Dumas, age 84. Inside the envelope was an old French military medal, dusty, heavy with memory. Ibrahim stared at it for a long time, then placed it beside his boots. He didn't speak, But for the second time in 2 days, he felt the tears rise. Not for himself, for all vestries that were finally being heard. On the flight back to Burkina Faso, the clouds were thick. Rain pressed against the windows like soft drum beats. Ibrahim stared outside, thinking about the letter, about Musa, about the young technician, about his people waiting for him. His advisor seated beside him broke the silence. "Monray, President, your speech. It's being taught in schools now, even in France." Ibrahim turned slightly, eyebrows raised. "Taught?" "Yes. As an example of how dignity defeats mockery." He nodded slowly. Then it wasn't a speech. It was a seed. The plane began its descent. Through the mist, the lights of Ouagadougou sparkled like stars on the ground. On the runway, people had gathered with candles and flags. Some held up pictures of lost soldiers. Others held signs. "Note to our president, our brother. We are Allen uniform. Respect is power." When Ibrahim stepped off the plane, a boy no older than 7 ran up to him, barefoot, soaked in the rain. He didn't say a word. He just hugged his leg. And for once, the cameras didn't zoom in. They knew this moment wasn't for them. It was for everyone else. The night after Ibrahim's return to Burkina Faso, his phone rang quietly. It was from the north, a remote village near the Mali border, a place often forgotten, even by maps. A trembling voice spoke. "Monsieur President, this is Adama. My son was one of the soldiers killed last year defending this land. He saw you on TV wearing your uniform, speaking with fire but no anger that night, for the first time since he died." I slept. Ibrahim closed his eyes. "Madame Adama, I wore that uniform for your son." She wept softly, gratefully. The line went silent, but that single call opened something inside Ibrahim. A river of memories, of names, of lives lost. Young men who had no suits, no speeches, only their blood and loyalty. That night he ordered something quietly without cameras or press. A wall not made of stone, but of names. Every fallen soldier's name would be engraved, not hidden in the capital, but built in the center of the country, where children could run their fingers over it and remember. The people wouldn't have to search for their heroes. They'd walk among them. As love poured from across Africa, backlash rose from elsewhere. French political commentators accused Ibrahim of emotional manipulation and called his silence on the show dangerous posturing. Some even questioned if he deserved to wear the uniform. But Ibrahim didn't flinch. Instead, he invited those critics on air to visit Burkina Faso, to meet the mothers, to walk the red soil, to see the faces behind his uniform. None accepted. But something unexpected happened. A French widow, once married to a peacekeeper stationed in Ouya, sent them a message. "President Traoré, your strength made me revisit my husband's journals. He wrote about you, once said you reminded him of a lion who walks slowly so the sheep won't panic." That message went viral. Suddenly Ibrahim wasn't just a leader. He was a symbol of what it meant to carry pain with grace. That day the rain returned in Ouagadougou. Children played barefoot in it, and old women prayed with open hands. Because when storms came now, they didn't hide. They stood tall like their president. 3 days after Ibrahim's return, he received a large brown envelope. Inside, a child's drawing. It showed a man in uniform standing under Agent Tree, arms wide open. Around him were tiny stick figures holding flags. The caption, written in crooked handwriting, read, "Papa says, you are not just a president, you are the big tree we hide under when the sun burns. Isata, age 06. Ibrahim stared at it for a long time. His advisor watched him closely. "Should we frame it, sir?" He nodded. "Yes, in my office, right above the national flag." At that moment, he said something no one expected. "Tomorrow I will go to the border alone." Alone? Yes. Not as president, as a soldier. He wasn't running from anything. He was walking toward everything he represented. No girds, no suits, just the same boots he wore during his youth. He carried Isata's drawing in his jacket right above his heart. Because sometimes the truest shields are made of paper and crayons, and sometimes the strongest men carry not weapons, but the weight of their people's love. On the sixth day, Ibrahim Traoré arrived quietly at a military outpost near the border. No camera crew, no red carpet. He stepped out of the old military jeep and was greeted by a young soldier, no older than 19. The boy stood frozen, shocked. "Are you really the president?" Ibrahim smiled. "Only if you let me be today." He spent hours walking with these soldiers, sharing stories, eating their food, listening to their fears. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, a small boy from the nearby village walked up to him barefoot, holding something in his hand. It was a toy gun made of wood and tied together with string. He held it out to Ibrahim. "This is for you. My papa says only real men wear uniforms with their heart." Ibrahim kneeled. He took the toy gun with both hands, as if it were a golden sword. "Thank you," he said. "I will protect it with my life." No one at the camp slept the same that night. Something had shifted. The president had come not to command, but to remember. While Ibrahim walked barefooted villages, the media storm in France grew hotter. Clips of the broadcast now had millions of views. The host, who mocked Ibrahim's uniform, tried to apologize online, but it was too late. The world had seen something too real, too raw. Young Africans began wearing camouflage clothes, calling it the Traoré uniform. Artists drew him as a tree rooted in history, with children under his shade. Even some French citizens started asking, why did we laugh at a man's scars instead of asking how he got them? Meanwhile, Ibrahim stayed silent until he received one final request from a school in Paris. They were having a week of African leadership and wanted to invite him as a closing speaker. His advisors said, "It's too soon. The tension is too high." But Ibrahim simply replied, "It's not about comfort. It's about clarity." He accepted, not with anger, but with a message the world didn't know it was about to hear. He would return to Paris, but this time not to be interviewed, this time to speak. The day arrived, 7th day, 1 full week since the broadcast that shocked the world. The auditorium in Paris was packed, not just with students, but journalists, professors, mothers, politicians, all waiting. Ibrahim walked in, still in his military uniform, not polished, not new, worn, truthful. He stood silently at the podium. Then, he began, "I did not come here to defend my clothes. I came here to speak for those who have none." He paused. "For the girls who walk 10 kilometers barefoot to school, the widows who whisper prayers over empty beds, the soldiers whose names you will never read on the news. You could hear breaths being held. My uniform is not fashion. It is a funeral cloth wrapped around a promise." A tear rolled down the cheek of a French African teacher in the front row. "I wear this not because I want to be feared, but because I refuse to forget." The room was still, then one clap, two, then many standing ovation. Even the host who mocked him stood up, hands shaking. That night, the Eiffel Tower lit up in the colors of Burkina Faso, and across the world, people cried, not for pain, but for pride. That same evening, after the speech that shook Paris, Ibrahim sat alone in his quiet hotel room. He opened a small envelope, a letter flown in from Ouagadougou just that morning. It was from a 9-year-old girl named Awa. She wrote in pencil with words that tilted across the page. "Dear President Ibrahim, my papa died in his uniform. Mama cries every night, but she says you are brave like papa. Please don't stop wearing it. When I grow up, you want to wear one too. Love, Awa." Ibrahim gently pressed the letter to his chest. His eyes welled with tears, but he didn't wipe them. Not this time. Outside, the media still buzzed, the interviews still rolled. But inside that quiet room, the real battle was being won. Dignity, identity, legacy. In that moment, Ibrahim wasn't just a leader or a soldier. He was a father to every child who had ever wondered if their story mattered. And somewhere across the world, little Awa smiled in her sleep, not knowing she had just given the president the courage to face the final day. The next morning, back at the TV studio where it all began, something unexpected happened. The host, the same man who once laughed at Ibrahim's uniform, requested to meet him off camera. Ibrahim agreed. They met in a quiet hallway. The host stood with lowered eyes, holding something in his hands. It was a framed photo of his grandfather, a Senegalese soldier in World War II in uniform. "I forgot," the host whispered. "I forgot what this uniform means. I forgot where I come from." Ibrahim looked at the photo, then at the man. "We don't need to cancel each other," he said softly. "We need to remind each other." The host nodded, tears silently falling. No cameras, no press release. Just two men in a moment of truth. A handshake followed, and with it a ripple began across France. People stopped scrolling and started thinking. For the first time in years, a conversation about African dignity, history, and honor was louder than politics. And it had begun with a joke and ended with a mirror. The final day of the week arrived. Ibrahim returned to Burkina Faso. There was no parade, no celebration, just families waiting at the airport, children waving homemade flags, and an old woman handing him a bowl of tow, a traditional meal, whispering, "Welcome home, son." Hez smiled. Later that night, he stood before a small group of orphans who had lost their parents to terrorism. He wore the same uniform, same boots, but this time he added something new. A patch on his chest sewn with little Awashand writing, "Be brave like Papa." He looked at the children and said, "One day you will all wear something powerful. Maybe not cloth, but courage. And when you do, wear it with your heart." The children clapped, some cried, and Ibrahim made a quiet promise under the stars. "For every life lost, I will live better. For every tear shed, I will fight smarter. And for every child watching, I will never remove this uniform of truth." He didn't just walk away that night. He rose as a symbol, not of power, but of purpose. Dear amazing viewers, if this story moved your heart even just a little, please do these three things. Like this video if you believe dignity should always be respected. Comment the word courage if you were touched by President Ibrahim's journey. Subscribe if you want to see more true, powerful African stories that make the world stop and feel. Let's remind the world what real leadership looks like, not with noise but with truth. Long live dignity, long live hope, long live Burkina Faso.